Hello everyone, welcome back to another series of Catalan opening. Now as promised for this week, we'll be going through the move bishop to b4 check in the Catalan closed position. And so yes, this episode will be a continuation from the previous one, and I'll be talking as if you've watched the first part of the Catalan closed position. And so, if you haven't watched it, there's a link up here that can actually direct you to that video. I think it will benefit a lot of people trying to get a feel of how to play a closed position in Catalan. But without further ado, let's just begin. And so we're on the last quarter of our video. And yeah, we promise we'll talk about the possibility of black playing bishop to b4 check, which is the more thematic move right now in the 21st century. This move bishop to b4 check is also not too popular until the late 2020 when we see Lila Chess Engine and also AlphaZero plays this against Stockfish. So if you check in a computer chess championship, you'll see that black plays a lot bishop to b4 here check to really ask the question, where do you put the piece to block the check? For example, if you play knight to c3, and this is basically ugly for white, because then black has at some point taking on c3 and you have the double pawn. If you're playing bishop to d2, we're also somewhat misplacing the bishop, as we saw in the first few minutes of this video. The bishop wants to place itself on b2 with fianchetto attacking on the center of the board, and or on f4 where attacked on the center of the board and on the queen side. But then on d2, this is not clear where the bishop is going. And more often than not, black will actually play bishop to e7 back to avoid trade of the bishop, with the argument he has a full compensation for misplacing the bishop on d2, and it's not going to be easy for white to develop the knight. I mean, the only square that is possible is c3. But we saw that in this particular position, we always want the knight on d2, not on c3, where it leaves a stronger possibility. The other way to defend, which is the best of all, I think, is to play knight to d2. This is also what Stockfish played, or Lila played against one another in a computer chess championship, and it's just proven to be fine. The idea of which is you still indirectly protect the pawn on e4, and you're developing the knight to the square that you wanted to play, just as in general Catalan position. One can play knight to e4, but then after castle and queen c2, we can play knight to e4 next. And so even if pawn to f5 were to be played here, we can toss away the principle of chess and not play knight to e4 directly. Even if the f-file is open, I think it was okay. With the white knight controlling the center of the board, and the black piece is not coordinated attack on the king side, I think this would have been pretty fine for white to go to. Another thing to pay attention to is if black plays pawn takes on c4, and then I think you still have pawn to a3, attacking the bishop, forcing it to move before take on c4. Obviously because we're pinned, we can't take on c4 now. And so if black tries to be crafty and play bishop takes on d2, then we take back, and we have the double bishop pair. You can play bishop to c3, aiming at the king side, the bishop on g2, aiming at the queen side. This will be a plus for us. This pawn on c4 is irrelevant, it will fall soon. For example, if black plays pawn to b5 just to protect the pawn on c4, we can play pawn to b3. Black does not have a choice, he must take to maintain material equality. But as we can see, the pawn here on c6 is very weak. We can target with rook to c1, knight to e5, every piece is attacking on c6. Just to show you, knight to d7, castle, a5, rook c1, bishop to b7. It's very difficult to protect this pawn. Once it pushes, it will die. And from here on out, white is the one who is having that easy development. Even here, you can play bishop takes on c6 and place the rook on c6, where it's more aggressive in controlling the open c-file that is currently open in the board. So this kind of position will be terrific for white. Now, not to mention that his pawn on a5 just hangs. Yeah, from here on out, he's just winning. If the bishop moves back to a5, we can castle, prepare to take c4 next move, and if pawn to b5, we still go b3 with the same idea. If c3 here, we go knight to b1, attacking the pawn on c3. We play pawn to b4 before we take on c3. This pawn on c-file will definitely be dead. And if he plays pawn to c3, just trying to wreck our structure, trying to get us into play pawn to c3 and take on c3. This is also crafty, but we don't have to take. We can play knight to c4. And if pawn takes on b2, we develop our bishop on b2, aiming on the king side right here. The bishop is attacked. It has to move. So the net material is that we lost a pawn, but the full compensation is that we have full development of our pieces. We are castled as well. 4 of our minor pieces is out. The queen and the rook has an easy place to develop. We'll look at black's pieces, which is still in the back rank. Rook here on a, it's stuck and it's not castled. This is full compensation that white can claim after sacrificing the pawn. Not to mention the center control is now on white's hand. And so this will be an excellent way for white to continue. And so this is pretty much what I wanted to cover for Catalan closed position. So let's do a bit of recap, shall we? On the move bishop to b4 check, we want to play knight to d2 to defend against that check, because that's going to be the best. We're going to play queen to c2, knight to f3 castle. We You can also play a3, in which the bishop were to capture the knight on d2. We'll have the double bishop pair and a very nice position. Position like this might incur. As we said, we have double bishop pair, and if knight to e4 were to be played in this position, we can play bishop to f4 and whatnot. And so the bishop will be safe for a while. But more importantly, every piece is developed. We can play rook to c1, targeting c4 pawn, while black is suffering a heavy lag in the development of his pieces on the queen side. And if the pawn were to be pushed to c6, then we still stick to our plan. We're bringing our queen to c2, but first we castle, and then we put the question on black. Like, what the heck is the bishop doing here on b4? Unfortunately, he still has to shrivel back to e7 someday. It doesn't matter what black does. We play pawn to e4 next move. We claim that we have a huge center of the board. A huge control over the center of the board is what I'm saying. Obviously, if black takes, this will lead to nothing good for black, with white's queen centralizing more into black's position. Again, as you said in the first part of the video, you can play bishop to d2, but this actually leads to a slightly equal position for both sides, when black can immediately pull the bishop back to e7 and claim that white has a misplaced bishop on d2. His, development is a bit impeded because the knight usually wants to be on d2. Now it has to go to c3 because the bishop now is on d2, right? If you want to play this position, you can, but just bear in mind that this will lead to a favorable, slightly more favorable position for black, and white will be the one struggling to find a win here. But then the general plan will be, white trying to push the pawn to e4, the knight to e5, queen to c2, and the rook to d1. In fact, I can show you really quick right now, pawn to e4, and if knight takes e4, we can exchange the center of the board and place knight to e5. If the exchange happens again, we claim that we have a better center control because of the e5 pawn. We can develop our rook very quickly to the semi-open file right here on d1, move our bishop to c3. We should have a good position for white, although nothing is clear about winning though in this position. And so, if you've noticed, I did not really come up with something for black, because I really don't believe that black can survive playing Catalan position, Catalan close position. I think it's just a bad opening to play in general. And so for that, I won't talk about something that I don't believe in, although as I said in the first quarter video quite a number of times, that if your computer throwing down computer lines, then probably you'll be okay. But then we're all not computers, so yeah, I won't talk about things that I won't believe in for black in this position. But hey, don't take my word as granted, right? Take a look at the statistic here from chessgames.com, which is arguably one of the largest database online. I should add free database online that you can get on the tip of your hand. It says here that the position is 37% of the time winning for white and only 22% winning for black. You can also see the numbers of game covered in the database is around 900 games, so somewhat a big sample size. The other set of data that I want to show you is from chesstempo.com, also quote-unquote a free database online that you can find, depending how you use it. But in essence, still you can see that the win rate for black in this position is only about 20%, while white has 47%. So the data a bit skewed here on chesstempo.com, but it doesn't matter. It shows you that white has a significant win rate over black in this Catalan close position. Normally, if it's a very good opening, we'll see about 4 to 5% difference and variance, but this particular opening, I don't know, I don't feel it's very good, so I don't really recommend it. Now that said, there are probably still, a very concrete, very difficult line for black that I've missed and that I've not put in the video. If you can think of any lines that probably can prove a significant advantage, you can put it down in the comments below, or just feel free to email me through or DM through Twitter or Instagram. I'll be happy to review it with you. In any case, if you have learned something on this video, please consider pressing the like button. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.